The Locked On Podcast Network presents the NBA Big 3 in 30. The 3 biggest stories in the NBA from our local experts at the Locked On Podcast Network. We bring you the real story, why it matters, what's next, who wins the big game, and more, all in 30 minutes. The NBA Big 3 in 30 starts now with the biggest story in the NBA.
You are Locked On Lakers, your daily Los Angeles Lakers podcast.
So you and I, Andy, were both really hoping that the Lakers would not try to engineer another Bron moment, despite the game being in Cleveland, which, yes, folks, we know he grew up in Akron. We know, close enough. Okay. And so this is, it's a homecoming game for LeBron. It's, where Bronny grew up and all that kind of stuff. And it's a big deal and whatever. And I get the impulse to try to put them on the floor together. But you and I were both hoping that they wouldn't. By all accounts and by all reports, they were going to, if the game allowed it. I would say if there's one silver lining to them falling behind by 18, it was that they couldn't engineer this moment in any way that wasn't totally ridiculous and credibility destroying. And so it didn't happen.
And you know what? Bronny ended up playing at the end of this game,
yep,
where you would normally play a deep reserve.
Last guy off the bench, as it should have been.
He's playing in a blowout. He would normally enter a game in a blowout in either direction at this point. And here's what I actually really liked about it. First of all, Bronny did a good enough job. Like, he had a really nice jumper that he connected on. He had a
mid-range baseline thing for his first NBA points.
Yeah, it was a really nice sequence. He had a couple assists. He had a steal. And the moment got to be his. Mm-hmm. It actually got to be his moment, which the crowd was really excited about. They were chanting for Bronny. Like, it reflects something you and I have both said a lot, that however controversial and polarizing Bronny on this roster is for a lot of Laker fans, a lot of media, whatever, it's not about Bronny. Nobody seems to dislike Bronny. People seem to be genuinely rooting for Bronny. You and I have said many times, he strikes us as a really grounded, hardworking young man who wants to be taken seriously and wants to be respected on his own merits. Like, he understands, I'm LeBron James's son. I know what these moments mean for my dad. I understand the history of it all. And I'm sure the moment on the court meant something to him. But I think it's also pretty clear he wants to be taken seriously because he earned the right to be taken seriously. And I feel like this played out perfectly because, again, he went out there, he played fine. He had moments where he looked good, and it got to be all his. And it didn't feel manufactured, and it didn't feel like it was about something else. Like, how do LeBron and Bronny engineer the moment together? Like, I thought this was great.
And it doesn't hurt the credibility of, it's like, if you put it, you're down by 15, down by 16. If you put them on the floor, then you are clearly prioritizing things that aren't winning over winning.
You mean in the second quarter, to be clear.
You put them in, you're down 15, 16 points in the second quarter, which is when this probably would have happened if they were up 15. In which case I would have felt still like, I don't like this. I don't think you should do it, but it's still better, I guess, than trying to do it when you're playing catch up.
Well, you clearly can't do it then.
Right. I mean, if I'm Bronny, I'm like, I'm taking off my shoes. Like, I'm not going to the game. Like, so I think it was off the table. And I don't think there was any real temptation to try to be like, well, can we do it for a minute? Like, the answer is no. If the circumstances were perfect, I understand the impulse of, wouldn't it be cool for Bronny and Bron to play together in Cleveland? It is not one of these places. It's not like baseball where you visit Colorado 16 times over the course of a season. You got one game in Cleveland. And okay, I mean, I understand the impulse, but I think ultimately the Lakers dodged a bullet here, because if they are trying to be taken seriously, and they are, this doesn't help. Like, once you get past the moment of history, which happened, at that point, you have to project that you are all about winning. And it's not just what people like you and I say. It's also what people think inside the locker room. And while I think in that locker room, everybody respects LeBron so much and enough that, like, okay, they get it. Everybody recognizes the significance of it from a kind of a family and emotional standpoint. But I could also see guys being like, come on, like, we're trying to win a game here.
Right.
And you're putting
Exactly.
a kid out there, like, and if it just chips away a tiny bit at the credibility that Redick has built up with this group this early in the season, it is so not worth it. And so in that sense, they dodged a bullet and are probably better off than they otherwise would have been.
Yeah, and again, I thought it was cool
None of this has to do with Bronny, by the way. 100%
no, I thought it was really cool that Bronny just entered a game. People were excited to see him play. He did a good job on the court, and the cheers were earned. Like, they were truly earned. Like, the people that were excited to see him got to see Bronny just perform a normal basketball game. For real, I think that's great.
It will be there aren't going to be many other. I can't think of other play. I mean, Miami, like, when they go there, like, is there going to be a temptation to put like? So in theory, this is kind of it, right? And the G League season opens next week, and the Lakers are going to send him there. I was just flipping through sports radio, and they were going through all these sort of what if scenarios around Bronny and Bron. And, what if LeBron demands that he stay on with the team all season? Okay, well, he's not going to. Like, like, these are not things that are going to happen. He's going to go down to the G League and play. And
okay, you know what?
Going to get back to normal.
Let me just say right now, if LeBron actually did that, and I want to emphasize this strenuously, he won't. But if he did, I think they'd actually tell him no. They would actually say, we cannot do
Can't do that. It's bad for Bronny. It's bad for his
It's bad for Bronny, and it's bad for the team. And eventually this is going to start to become a thing that nobody's going to want to deal with. Again, cannot emphasize this enough. LeBron's not going to do that. But if he did, I think the answer would actually be no.
So again, I am looking very much towards these next two games as a real litmus test for who they are. And, if they come out and play with the same level of intensity, meaning not nearly enough, whether it's against Toronto or Detroit, it's going to say something. You come out and play really, really hard. I mean, Toronto catches fire, maybe Detroit catches fire. Like, sometimes weird things happen. And those games probably aren't going to be blowouts the way that fans would want them to be. But especially if AD is hurt, especially if Austin Reeves is banged up or whatever, kind of what do you look like as a team? How much give a bleep can you project for these games and make sure you come home to play a limping Philadelphia team when this road trip is over? Make sure you come home with a winning record.
Get ready to tackle the NFL action with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook, because right now new customers can bet $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if they win. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place live bets on the NFL all in one place. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. You'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win that first $5 bet. And that winning $5 bet could come from an NFL game in Week 9 with their quarterback on deck to return. The New Orleans Saints are big favorites over the lowly Carolina Panthers. FanDuel has the Saints 7.5-point favorites in Charlotte this Sunday. That's FanDuel.com. Never waste a hunch and make every moment more with FanDuel, official sportsbook partner of the NFL.
Karl-Anthony Towns went for 44 points, and the New York Knicks beat the Miami Heat.
You are Locked On Knicks, your daily New York Knicks podcast,
Your Knicks won 116-107 over the Miami Heat. And so much for Karl Towns not being involved enough in the offense of this team. Obviously, that was the big story coming out of the Cleveland game. He only had, I think it was 8 shot attempts. I saw that one in person, and it was, I think that I would agree. It seemed like he just wasn't super involved. I was yelling from my seat, going like, "Set a screen, like get this guy going. Like, what are you doing?" Like, he didn't shoot particularly poorly in that game or anything. It just seemed like there wasn't a lot to get him involved with, and that was definitely a focus in this game. He ends this one with 44 points, 13 rebounds, 3 of those offensive, one of them really big offensive, 2 assists, 17 of 25 shooting, 4 of 5 from 3. And I just thought this was just a masterful showing on offense. I mean, this was exactly the sort of performance that the Knicks made this trade for. This is what you want when you get a guy like Cat, when you get a guy who's considered to be one of, the most talented offensive 3-level scoring bigs of all time. You want to get a performance like this. You want him shooting over the defense. You want him getting inside and bullying his way to the rim. You want him getting big offensive rebounds. I mean, it's just a little bit of everything. I think, there's so many things to point out, but thing one that I noticed in this game was he was routinely matched up with Nikola Jovic, or they were seeking that matchup out. And he seemed so comfortable with just rising right over him and shooting over him. Even if there was, what for anyone else that's not 7 feet tall would be pressure, he sort of had this understanding of, well, I'm much taller than him, so he can't really affect my shot. It reminded me a lot of back when Porzingis used to be on the Knicks, and he would do the same thing, where it was just like, yeah, I'm tall and I can shoot. So, if you're not going to put a tall person that can defend on me, then I'm just going to shoot over that person. And it's not really going to affect me too much, because if they get too tight, then they're going to foul me. But if not, then I just get a nice open look, where, their outstretched hand does not affect too much of what I'm trying to do. And I thought the Cat took advantage of that early. He was trying to take advantage of that matchup on the inside early with Jovic on him. And it was just a really good way of getting him going right from the start. But I thought that he also had some huge looks down the stretch where he just was ending up with Jimmy Butler on him, which maybe Jimmy Butler was seeking out that matchup, rightly or wrongly. By the time that all was said and done, I don't think that it was a great decision for Jimmy to try to end up on Cat so often. But he had like a couple nice post ups on him. He had one time where he got fouled down the stretch that was big. And then most importantly, late in the game on a Mikal Bridges 3-point attempt, Cat just got this perfect offensive rebound where he just snatched it from right over Jimmy Butler. And then Butler and Bam like closed in on him to try to contest. And Cat just kind of patiently waited just a moment, did a quick little, shot fake, and then went up and made a key layup for an and one. That was basically the dagger for the Knicks in this game. As if he hadn't done enough already, he came through with that huge dagger too, just to finally break the Heat's back and kind of put this one away. So that was huge as well. I also really enjoyed watching him and Brunson together, and I think that that's sort of where this leads into talking about Brunson too. There was a huge emphasis on Cat pick and rolls in this game. It was very obvious. So let's get into Brunson a little bit too. So 22 points, 9 assists, 6 of 18 field goals for Brunson, 3 of 7 from 3. I think so much for Brunson not being a point guard that can direct the offense. I think that, he really put it on himself to direct traffic in this game to get Cat involved. And, he's a guy who acts on his words. Like, that's what he said after the last game was, it's on me. Cat's not getting involved enough. I need to make sure to get him involved. And then what does he do but get Cat involved, and really took an active role in making sure that Cat was coming up, setting screens. I think that I think there was like very visible and audible signs that, like, I don't know if I don't want to say that Brunson is like annoyed with Cat or something, but it reached a point where you could hear him on TV yelling Cat, like screaming to him, like, get up here, like set a screen for me and we're going to get this thing going. And, there was that. And then later on in the game too, I noticed, if you were watching Brunson as the action was happening, like he was kind of just waiting up top. And then you could see him like more or less like staring straight at Cat and just kind of like pointing like down, like up here, screen, 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 screen. And that was pretty much how they started most possessions in this game where those two were on the floor together. And that it worked out great because then you had all these interesting looks where Cat would set the screen for the initial action, and then Brunson could either get an open shot or Cat could dive to the rim, or Brunson could start going in and then kick it out to Cat for a pick and pop. Like there was all kinds of stuff, and the Heat didn't really have anyone that could contend with Cat in this game. So that's you want to involve that player as much as humanly possible. And, he's not a primary initiator type that's going to come down with the ball in his hands. So, of course, you got to, have your point guard then come down and set him up. And they just did that over and over brilliantly. And I thought that it was a phenomenal, showing. And it led to basically all the types of shots that you would want Cat to end up with at the end of a game. Tons of 3-pointers. He shot 4 or 5 from 3. Tons of looks on the inside. Lots of opportunities where he could kind of get the ball in his hands going downhill, which I think, through watching him through a few games is somewhere he really excels at. If you could get him, the ball in his hands with a little bit of momentum and just let him take 1 or 2 dribbles and then, protect the ball on the way in, go up for a layup, potentially get an and one or whatever. Like there's just so many different opportunities you can set up by starting with that pick and roll. But yeah, I think that it would probably be a good idea if the Knicks open up basically like most possessions when Brunson and Cat are on the floor with a pick and roll between those two. Cause I'll get into another, look that really stood out to me a little later with Josh Hart, but even it's bleeding over to what's working for other players, like, oh, Josh Hart had a great opportunity because this pick and roll works so well and open the floor, open the offense up in such a pleasing way where, that you have all these people on the perimeter that you can kick the ball out to. All of them are capable of putting the ball on the floor for a moment. It's just, it really works. So I hope that that's a look that they, stay consistent with. Like, don't just make this a 1 game thing. Don't just make this matchup dependent. Like, work through it, figure out how to execute this pick and roll with Cat and Brunson and all the options that come with it at the highest level. And I think that that's going to, that's your ticket to becoming one of the top offenses in the NBA and potentially like the contender that you want to be. I also thought, in terms of Brunson's own shot, it's still looking a little shaky at times, but I think he made the ones that mattered. He had 10 points on 3 of 6 shooting in the third. That was really big for the Knicks. Like they fell behind by, I think the most was 10. I didn't write down like what the biggest margin was, but I think it was 10 points. And, things were looking a little dire. Like it just kind of seemed like one of those nights where no shots were going to go in. And then Brunson's shot started going in again. Mikal Bridges' shot started going in again. And things just kind of turned around for the Knicks at that point. So, I mean, Brunson, I don't feel like I have to explain how his offense works to people here. Like, you all watch him all the time. Like, I think the main thing is just the midi looked a little off in this game, and that's actually the shot that I have the most faith in him to make, like all the time. So I'm very not worried about that. But I will just say keep Jaime Jaquez away from my Knicks. I don't know. I don't think it was necessarily his fault, but like Brunson had an injury scare in this game with Jaquez nearby. Once again, he like kind of awkwardly like came over on his foot while he was driving, like Brunson did, like on his own foot. But Jaquez was in vicinity, so I blame him. But no, Brunson like kind of was driving and his foot like kind of folded under, like it looked like an ankle turn, but like if your foot was going north to south instead of east to west, you know what I mean? So it looked a little ugly at first, but he walked it off and felt okay afterwards, it seemed like, and actually managed to turn around, his shooting after that and made some threes and stuff. So I guess it was fine. Maybe he just needed, it was like a chiropractor session. He just needs to really get a crack out of that ankle and then he'll be fine. I don't know.
Get ready to tackle the NFL action with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook, because right now new customers can bet $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if they win. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place live bets on the NFL all in one place. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. You'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win that first $5 bet. And that winning $5 bet could come from an NFL game in Week 9 with their quarterback on deck to return. The New Orleans Saints are big favorites over the lowly Carolina Panthers. FanDuel has the Saints 7.5-point favorites in Charlotte this Sunday. That's FanDuel.com. Never waste a hunch and make every moment more with FanDuel, official sportsbook partner of the NFL.
You are Locked On Raptors, your daily Toronto Raptors podcast.
Late after the Toronto Raptors lost to the Charlotte Hornets 138-133 on Wednesday. You know, as far as ways to spend an October Wednesday go, this one wasn't so bad. Yes, the Raptors lost. I feel like that's going to be something to expect going into most games, especially with the news from earlier today that Scottie Barnes will be out for 3 weeks at minimum, likely more than that, recovering from a broken orbital bone. It sucks. It's a bummer. I did a little short about it earlier on YouTube and on Instagram, just kind of talking about how there aren't really many silver linings to be found about it. But I do think there is a stark difference between the Raptors team that didn't have Scottie Barnes last season and the Raptors team that does not have Scottie Barnes now. And we saw that difference play out tonight in the game against the Hornets. They're entertaining as hell still. They've been entertaining all season long. Again, not very good in terms of picking up wins. They're 1-4 now, but as far as 1-4 goes, they have kind of checked a lot of the boxes you would have hoped this team would be checking at this point, even without the victories. And the same applies tonight. And look, this team has pillars. This team has guys who can sort of organize and have actual real basketball happen through and around them. Number one, Jakob Poeltl, who notably was not available for the back 21 games of last season when Scottie Barnes was not there either, and they felt it. They felt Jakob Poeltl's absence all last season. We saw why in this Hornets game tonight. Just the baseline he provides is just like a really good player. 20 points, 16 boards, 2 assists, 2 steals, and a plus 20 in a game the Raptors lost by 5. He plays 35 minutes as well. Those 13 minutes without him kind of cooked them. It's a bummer. They tried to ride him as long as they could. Like that's a very high minutes load for Jakob Poeltl. They will have to figure out a way to fill in those minutes. Maybe more Jonathan Mobo at the 5. Maybe Bruno Fernando. I don't know about that. Maybe it's just more Jonathan Mobo at the 5, and you're totally fine with it. Either way, thought Yak was incredible tonight. And again, that's like the kind of biggest difference, other than, you know, there's actual real NBA players on this team, which there weren't on the team last year down the stretch in most of the spots in the rotation. Jakob Poeltl just sets a baseline, right? I've talked about this before. This was why the end of last season was a bummer, was because the second Poeltl went out, any hope for like reasonable, positive, developmentally friendly basketball went out the window. He does so much to set the table for everyone to go and do their thing. His screening is exceptional. He's a wonderful rebounder. He cleans up the glass. He is at the back line of defense. He just does a lot to tie things together for this team on top of the elbow playmaking and all of that stuff. And it's just really nice to have him playing really well. Last couple games out for him, some of the best ball he's played with the Toronto Raptors. And again, he is one of those pillars. RJ Barrett, another one of those pillars. He's going to have a lot to do with Scottie Barnes out for sure. 31 points for him tonight, 10 of 18. He goes 4 of 6 from downtown. A couple of pretty brazen triples down the stretch of this one to keep the Raptors alive, as it seemed like the Hornets were going to coast to a victory, but the Raptors, very annoying as they're wont to be, it seems, kept it close, kept it so it got down to free throws near the end, and RJ Barrett, big part of that. He had 8 assists as well. You love to see that. You know, we could certainly talk about the defense. I'm not sure RJ Barrett's defense is winning any awards from this game. I'm not sure anyone's defense in this game is winning awards, except for my precious boy, Jonathan Mobo, who we'll talk about later. But yeah, I think offensively, exactly what you want to see from RJ, minus the free throws, 7 of 12, what's going on with the free throws, man? It's so weird. It's like one of the stranger things ever. It's just everything gets fixed with his game after coming from the Knicks, and then he becomes a way worse free throw shooter than he was with the Knicks. Maybe that's the trade-off. It's a trade-off I'll take for the RJ Barrett we've seen, the wildly efficient RJ Barrett we've seen. Again, 31 points tonight on 18 field goal attempts. Pretty awesome. Obviously getting to the line a whole lot as well, which he did not do in his first game back, and he had something to say about it after the game, if you recall, after that Nuggets game. Either way, Barrett's a pillar. He is a guy who can keep your offense afloat. He, those little flourishes of creation, some pick and roll stuff with Jakob Poeltl, had a nice lob to him early in this game. All examples of the sort of expanding sort of playmaking touch he's had. He's not making sort of elaborate, incredible, bend the defense type reads. He's just kind of making the simple reads in front of him. And he had a couple turnovers tonight too that weren't super timely, but overall you love the playmaking stuff from Barrett on top of the efficient scoring. And again, a pillar, a guy who is going to give this team shape and purpose and reasons to watch every single night, even while Scottie Barnes is on the shelf. And then a guy who, maybe you wouldn't have classified as a pillar down the stretch last season because he was a very green rookie and figuring things out. But I think it's safe to say Grady Dick is a pillar for this team. Yeah, the pillar. Yeah, sure. He's great. 30 points, career high. He set his second career high of the season. They have played notably only 5 basketball games. Really, really awesome start from Grady Dick. And he did it while hitting just 2 threes. Just 2 threes. He takes 11 shots from 2. He hits 9 of them. And just the array of ways he scores, it's like it seems to be broadening every time he plays. It's, running off of curls into beautifully in rhythm 18-foot mid-range pull-ups or catch and shoot. Sorry. There's the transition stuff. He had a monster dunk running the floor like a maniac tonight, getting a pass from Jamal Shet. He had another one of his seemingly almost patented scooping finger roll high off glass finishes, this time with the right hand, not the left. It's been really fun to watch the arrival of Grady Dick as a guy who can just do a whole lot to affect your offense. He bends defenses. He already does. It's only going to continue. It's only going to get more prominent as his threes fall and other guys in the team are also, drawing gravity and things like that. Emmanuel Quickley. Speaking of pillars, we'll talk about him in a sec, but Grady Dick, man, really, really impressed with him. He can be a part of really good offensive basketball. He was a big reason why I was high on this team's ability to be a good offensive team this year. Having someone that dynamic, that stretchy, that defense bending is going to make everyone's life easier on offense. And he is going to be, I think, asked to do a ton without Scottie Barnes. And I think you're perfectly fine with that. I have no issue with Grady Dick taking 15 to 20 shots a game because they're coming from all over the floor and he's getting to the rim and he's obviously got the 3-point gravity. It's really, really exciting stuff with Grady Dick early on here to start the season. And again, we haven't even really seen this team whole yet. I think Grady Dick's the kind of guy who, playing with more effective lineups, the more good players you put into a lineup with Grady Dick, I think his impact is only going to be amplified. So a lot to look forward to there with Grady Dick. And this is the sort of thing that we didn't get to do last year when there was no Scottie and there was no Poeltl and Quickley and Barrett were in and out of the lineup. There was just no sort of envisioning of what these guys look like in sort of the grander vision of this team. Yeah, Scottie Barnes wasn't there tonight, but the way Grady Dick played, you can absolutely see how that works on a Scottie Barnes team and how it all fits together. So yeah, some really important information gathering to be done for a guy like Grady Dick, and the information so far pretty darn awesome. And then let me just quickly hit on Emmanuel Quickley. Damn it, I hate how his last name is an adverb. But I think where they lost this game mostly would be stuff that Emmanuel Quickley helps mitigate. They lost this game in 2 stretches, late in the first quarter where they got totally sewered by turnovers, and late in the third quarter where they also got totally sewered by turnovers. A better turnover night overall, just 14 for a team that's been kicking around like 20 turnovers a game. More than 21% of their possessions at one point, might have been before the Nuggets game, that was true, but at one point this year, more than 21% of their possessions were turning into turnovers and crushing the league in terms of the frequency with which they were kicking it away. A little better tonight, but a couple of untimely stretches where they just kind of lost the plot. and, couldn't handle ball pressure. They were the Hornets were sending two to the ball, things like that. You had a bad a bad Barrett turnover, a bad Abaji turnover, a bad Mobo turnover, or Shed Mobo sort of missed connection underneath turnover. And it just kind of fell apart. I think with Emmanuel Quickley, his assist to turnover stuff is really good. He's a ball security guy. This team badly needs some ball security, and they badly need some 3-point volume, man. Again, I mentioned earlier, they lost this game by 33 points in the 3-point department, 60-27. They only hit 9 threes. They only take 28, which I don't think is what Darko Rajakovic envisioned for this team, right? They were bombing them away in the preseason. We know just the math of the NBA. If you're taking more threes, you're going to have a better chance to win games. I don't think Darko wants this team taking in the high 20s, a positively Denver Nuggets level of 3-point volume. But without Emmanuel Quickley, who might provide 7, 8, 9, 10 threes a game, they're just going to be at a disadvantage when it comes to that. Obviously, no Jacoby Walter, who's a guy who's going to let them fly. Kelly Olynyk, obviously, is someone who can get them up. Like, they just don't have enough shooting right now. It's not even the accuracy as much as the volume, though the accuracy ain't great either. But Quickley, just a couple of threes from him on top of some ball security, the result of this game probably flips. And I'm looking forward to when he comes back. I think he's going to be a real balm for a lot of the issues they're going to face without Scottie Barnes. Extra shot creation, 3-point shooting. You can spam the 3-point game a little bit more to try to tilt it and sort of tilt the variance your way. And when you're sort of outgunned talent-wise against the teams they're going to be up against in the coming weeks. Quickly, get him back soon. It would be really awesome to see him return this weekend. And there's a lot to evaluate between Quickley, Grady Dick, RJ Barrett, Jakob Poeltl, and everyone else playing off of those guys. There's competent basketball to be played. There's entertaining basketball to be played. And there are games like tonight that, could be flipped just by having the competence of Quickley guiding the ship.